Hello, this is Daniel, and today I'm going to show you how to set up and program your LDB-2 light dimmer box. First, let's go ahead and do a quick overview of the control itself. Taking a look at the inside of the control, you can see in the middle here we've got our power terminals, and then on the right hand side we've got our relay 1, and on the left our relay 2. And then we've got our variable AC outputs, output 1 on the right, output 2 on the left. And then if you are doing a 0 to 10 DC output for controlling your lights, we've got V3, which would be output 1, and V4, which would be output number 2. So we've got the relay, the variable AC, and the variable DC output for number 1, and then relay, variable AC, variable DC for output number 2. The sensor terminal on the backboard here is not used, and then we do have an alarm terminal here that you can use and set up if you want to have an alarm connected. On the back of the display here, you can see we've got a connector here, which is where we wire in our light or lux sensor if we are using one. And you can see I've got one sensor wired in here. We would have a second sensor wired in if we wanted a sensor on both output 1 and output 2. And the user manual has the wiring diagram for that. Let's take a look at the actual programming of the LDB-2 itself. Let's first go through some of the basic settings, and then I will show you how to set up the light program itself. So first off, we have our current day. So in here, we can set up for both channel 1 and channel 2 what the current day is. You would just use the check mark to select, arrows to change what day it is, and check mark to save it. Next up, we can go to configuration. In here, we can configure the time, and this is going to be very important because all of our lights are controlled based off of a time schedule. So you need to make sure that you set your controls time to be accurate to what your actual time is. Again, you can use your check mark, your arrow keys, to adjust your time. You can adjust the frequency. So if you have power that is 50 Hertz, you can go in here and adjust that. And then we've got a few other settings. Here you can save your settings to a settings saver cube. You can restore settings. So if you've got settings that are already saved onto a cube and now you're wanting to either after a factory reset or on a completely new unit, you want to copy those settings over, then you can restore the settings onto the unit from the saver cube. And of course, factory defaults, like I mentioned. One thing that I should mention is this control is slightly different in that you can completely factory default the unit, or you can factory default your configuration, or you can factory default your schedules and events. So you've got a few different options there of what all you can default, a couple of basically sub options of just defaulting the configuration or the schedules and events while keeping the rest of the control as it is if you just want to do a partial wipe. And of course, there is always the option to update the firmware if we do release an update. Next, I will take a quick look in Diagnostics. In here, we've got our channel 1 and 2 override. This can be helpful if you want to verify that your wiring is correct, that your lights are working properly. You can go in and you can adjust your output level. You'll notice I'm in output 1 manual override, and so when I go above 0%, then my LED lights up because this output is on. And we can see here we do have a sensor lux reading because I do have the sensor attached. Of course, I don't have any lights attached, so this lux reading is not changing because my lights aren't getting any brighter as I up my output. And let's just throw this back down to 0 and save that. If you want to override channel 2, you can do that. And then you can also calibrate if you are using the lux sensor like I have here. So in here, you can calibrate your minimum output. I'll show you what that menu looks like. Basically, you'll select the channel that you're going to be using, and then it's going to run through a calibration and reduce the power to the minimum, take a look and see what your lux reading is, and go from there. You also have a maximum output calibration. Going to do the same thing, but just for your maximum output. And then we've got an auto calibration, which will do both. It'll do a maximum and a minimum output calibration for you, putting up the power to your lights to 100%, reading what the lux reading is, then going down to 0%, reading what your lux reading is, and thereby gaining an idea of how much lux your lights output. Then let's hop into the actual programming. So in Light Program, we've got a few things in here. We've got the control mode. So here we need to select what channel. Channel 1, sure. And then we've got 2 different control modes that we can use. We've got power control, which just means 0 to 100% output. You set what output you want at what time, and it'll do that for you. If you have a lux sensor attached, like I do, then you're going to want to use sensor control mode. And so in this control mode, it's going to be looking for and trying to attain the target lux value. So this is going to take your ambient light into account, and it'll only give as much power to your lights as is needed to bring your lux reading up to the target lux reading. There is the ability to have your sensor alarm enabled or disabled, depending on if you want to get an alert if your lux sensor is damaged. We will want to set up what our restart day is. So here we have both channel 1 and channel 2 restart days. And we can set this to, whatever we want our restart day to be. And then we will want to enable it. So how this works is on channel 1, once we reach day 85, at the end of day 85, it is going to restart and go back to schedule 1, day 1, because we're enabled. If it is disabled, so channel 2, once it reaches day 2, at the end of day 2, because I'm disabled, then it is going to just cut the power. It'll go to 0% output and just stay there until you restart your schedule. We have our rise duration. So again, we can select channel 1 or channel 2, and then a rise duration value between 1 minute or 100, all the way up to 100 minutes. Now, the rise duration is the amount of time that it takes for your light to rise up to the value that you have told it should be at. So for example, if we say that at 6 o'clock we want 10% output, and before that we were at 0%, then at 6 o'clock it's going to start rising up from 0%, and after 5 minutes it's going to reach that 10% output. After the rise duration, we've got the fall duration. And so this is the exact same thing. We got a setting for channel 1, a setting for channel 2, 1 to 100 minutes, but this is for when your light is decreasing. So here, if your actual light, if your current value was at, say, 50%, and then you come to an event that says reduce it down to 25%, this is the amount of time that it'll take to reduce that light value. So you can customize those to make your rising and falling as gradual or quick as you desire. Then let's go into the event list. This is the last thing we'll look at, and this is where the actual programming happens. So in here, we've got our schedule. So schedule 1, we've got lots of schedules available. I believe it is up to 20. Let me just double check here. Yes, we have up to 20 schedules, and you'll run through schedule 1. We've got start and end days here, so it'll run through schedule number 1, start to end. Then if you have a schedule number 2 enabled and created, it's going to run through schedule number 2, start to end, etc. All the way up to, if you have 20 different schedules created, it'll run through all 20 schedules. For now, let's set this up. We can have the schedule off. We can have it for just channel 1. We can have it for channel 2. Or we can have it for both channel 1 and channel 2. I'm going to go ahead and just program this one up for channel 1. Then we're going to want to set our start day. So starting day 1 and ending. Let's just do maybe a 3-week schedule. So ends on day 21. Active events, this will increment as we actually add events down below. So here we can now see we've got our first event, and we can set up the time at which it's going to take effect and what our light should be. And we can see here, if you scroll down, you've got all your list of different events that you can set up. So we can go in, we can say at 6 o'clock, and here, okay, we're at 0 to 100. So maybe 6 o'clock, we want 20%. And then maybe at 8, we want to jump that up to maybe 40%. And then at 6 p.m., we want to drop it back down. Oops, I'm going the wrong way if I want 20. We want to drop it back down to 20. And then we'll have it 20 for maybe half an hour. And at 6:30 p.m., we're just going to go down to 0. And then at that point, you can see we've got all these events that we could program in, but I'm not going to take the time. Up to 12 total events in one day. And then we can save our changes, change that to a yes, and hit the check mark. it will save our events, and that is it. One final thing, if we pop back in here, we can see we now have 4 active events because we've got those events in there. And you can scroll down to the bottom and tell it to save, or once you're done, if you hit the back arrow, it's going to ask you, would you like to save your changes? So here, you can just change it to a yes and exit that way rather than scrolling all the way down to the bottom. And that is the basics of programming an LDB-2. And here, now you can see, because I've got some programming in, you can see what the main screen will actually look like when we have some active events. So we are channel number 1. Our output is currently at 5%. It's ramping up to the target of 40%. We're on day 2 of our schedule. Our state, we're ramping up. We are in schedule number 1, and we're on the second event because of what our current time is. That is how you program the LDB-2. If you have any questions on how to do anything in here, or if I didn't explain something all the way, leave a comment down below and I will be happy to help you out. That's going to do it for this video though, so I'll see you guys in the next one.